How far have we come since 1964 in the
Not
Civil
far
Rights
enough,
Act?
obviously.
Dan, hang on. How far have we come since 1964?
I'd have to agree with Jimmy. You know, I mean, I when I talk about that breakfast of hope, and in reality, that dinner is constant. The sort of disempowerment that my kids feel, or that kids feel, or that adults feel, or I mean, there's so many phrases. You know, there's a new TV series that just came out, and it's called Blackish. And so I noticed in the New York Times there was a critique about it where they basically called one of the people that's involved with the series an angry black woman.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And so the conversation, to me, speaking about what an empathy platform is, well, first of all, the phrase is insulting. But second of all, let's assume, for an instance, that a particular black woman might be angry. There's probably an awful lot of reasons for that anger that would make anybody angry.
Let me ask you a
right?
question.
So why would they frame it like that without actually thinking about the backdrop? How does it feel to be disempowered? How does it feel to be oppressed? How does it feel to be suppressed? How does it feel to create a domination effect that we pretend isn't one? Right? How does that feel?
There is a song, an old rock and roll song that says, what is it? It seems like I got to do wrong before they notice me. And it's back from our day, back in the 60s. Now, you mentioned
I like
your
the fact that he said back from our day.
I know it.
I remember.
I mentioned to a few people that I was going to be on with you today,
Okay,
and then I
well,
decided.
I hope they're watching.
And I said to them, I said, if you don't know who he is, then you're just not in my bracket.
But think of this.
History book.
I'm trying to get to the Sweet 16. If you're not in my bracket,
That's right.
But think of this. You talk about raising 5 kids. I have 41 godchildren of all races. And this is not something I'm really interested in putting out on YouTube because they all know who they are. Most of them have gone on to be, just about all of them have gone to be successful in their lives. And I've raised a couple of hundred of other people's children of all races. The one thing I try to teach them is that you shape the world. The world does not shape you. It's how you're going to think about issues. And we always, at my dinner table, we always put the issues on the table. Look, what happened at school today? What did you think about this? Why don't we use you mentioned the B word, what about the HWOOO word, whatever? And these are things that in my home, with a mother and a father in the house, we were never allowed to use those words. So I was raised in a period of time when I saw the whole world blowing up before me, yet the moment I stepped across the door sill of my home, I was expected to speak the King's English properly. I was expected to conduct myself as a gentleman at all times. I was expected to pull the chair out for my mother, put her coat on, the things I still do to any woman that I'm with to this day. So when I'm asking someone to do something, or any of my godchildren or children that I'm trying to affect, and I say, this is how you treat your mother, because a lot of young people, particularly young black males, are from single parent families, and all they have is their mother. So their anger comes home to their mother. But you mentioned one point that I wanted, that Dan, I want you to think about what you just said, because it hits right at home. I asked this question several years ago on the air, and I must have gotten thousands of email responses right away. I was working at one of the local stations in Boston that was streamed all over the world. I got them from China, Germany. And I asked one question. I said, let me ask you one question. Let me ask the world one question. When you say that a black person like me is angry, I ask you one question. What the hell do I have to be happy about? I live in a country that sends my children off to war. And I've got several of them in the combat zone right now, spilling blood, dying, and so forth. And every day, I'm worried about being stopped by a police officer and being shot if I don't put my hands up quickly. I gotta worry about which street I walk down in America to not be shot at night. So don't come telling me that all of a sudden, I got a black president. Listen, I love President Obama. I'm happy for him, but he does not end the problem. You mentioned it earlier, and it's a very good point. The moment we got a black president, too much of white society felt they got off the hook. There's no racism. Look what we did.
That's right.
Look what we did. You didn't do anything. Yeah. Time did this. It was time to make this happen. And what I'm trying to say is that until we as people grow, Dan, I commend you for your work, but it's so much bigger It's bigger than a football game. It's bigger, and that's a good point.
But you got to
gotta
change
start somewhere.
one at a time, Jimmy.
Okay,
you can't change the whole world overnight.
Jimmy, but damn it, I can try.
I know you
You
can.
can say whatever you want that I can't change it, but it doesn't
And
mean
he's
I'm not
trying
going to
to.
try.
And he's trying to in a group
And I'm going to
effort.
try it on my terms.
I understand.
Because you got to accept me for who I am on my terms. I'm not interested in accepting you on your terms anymore because I've seen your terms for 65 years and they don't work. They don't work for everybody. And in a democracy, read your Constitution, read your Declaration of Independence. Unless it works for everyone, it works for no one. Our founding fathers said that. Yeah, they were slave owners. Yeah, they did a whole bunch of dirty stuff. But that's cool. They still wrote some beautiful documents. Now we have to make the words live.
All right, speaking of slave owners, this is a segue to Tom Yaki. And I want to talk to both you guys about this. Oh, yeah, I had to mention that name. That's
You had to go there. Go ahead.
I had to go there. Just can everybody take a nice drink and relax. Tom Yaki was the owner of the Boston Red Sox for many, many years. I know over 50 years. I want to say from to the
1933, wasn't it?
Thank you. 33 to, and then Gene passed away, and John Harrington took over the estate.
Yep.
And John Harrington, whose job it was to almost create a legacy of Tom Yaki, is the guy behind. Well, no, but Gene passed away. John got all that money. He's the head of the Yaki Foundation, and he's been trying to preserve that name around Boston. And
That's
I'm not.
both names. Don't forget.
And
that.
I'm not sure if he's doing a great job or not, because now there's a movement to get Yaki Way closed down and make it back to Jersey Street. I want to know. Wait a second. I know how you feel. I want to know.
No, you don't know how I feel.
Tell me.
Don't ever assume that you know how
All right,
I feel.
I know, and assume makes
But
asses
let's
out of
go
you and
to
me.
our guest.
That's where I was going. Okay, fine.
First, I want to get back to Jimmy's point about I think that the whole concept that we live in a post-racial world because we have an African-American
Yeah, it's
president
just
is
ridiculous.
something that actually set us so far back in a conversation in many
interesting.
respects because it's
Go ahead.
created this dynamic where people can't even understand as I talked about before, just the incredible economic disenfranchisement and what that means throughout generations, and also just the systemic way in which that disenfranchisement has been institutionalized in our country. So the irony of most of the conversation tonight is I think we're saying exactly the same thing.
We are.
But I don't say it with as much flair.
No, well, by the way, and don't try to, because when it comes to flair,
But
I'm the man in the chair. Does that make you happy?
Yes, that makes me happy.
Man in the chair.
I get
You got
it. That was
Thank
well
you.
done. Well done.
Continue, Dan.
So, I think what you see is just, I understand the movements that sort of to either rename back or to
Yeah.
do whatever. I would say that, just as when people are just attacking Goodell, and there, so many people are attacking Goodell,
It's easy.
and I get the dynamic of that, all right? And yet, just like you got to start somewhere,
Okay.
when you start thinking about people trying to at least make somewhat of an amends about history. I mean, you'd have to be someone that didn't either get the Globe, read the paper, or do anything not to have read the amazing piece on Tommy Harper
right.
the other day, right?
Bob Holler.
An amazing piece. Holler's an amazing writer, by the way, and just an unbelievable social justice advocate, an amazing writer.
and Jimmy lived the Tommy Harper story, I just want to say,
So-
but go ahead.
20 years before he ever wrote it. But go
Right,
ahead.
right.
And was persecuted for just bringing all this stuff to the public. So
Right.
as much as I give him credit, and you did a good job with that, because I didn't read it, but you were still 20 years behind. But nobody wanted to hear what we were saying back at that time. Go ahead.
Imagine what Tommy Harper went through.
There you go.
And that's what I think Bob did really well, was kind of, it gave Tommy an audience to talk about what he's been going through himself.
Well, he's still going through it.
Right,
I mean, it doesn't-
absolutely.
It doesn't go away.
No, it
right?
doesn't
So
go
I
away.
think that people make a mistake to think that it goes away, or that because he had notoriety or he had fame at some point, or that somehow it mitigates it. It does not mitigate it.
You can't
So-
give him back the years.
That's right.
See, it's the same as with Nelson Mandela. I was blessed to be able to interview this man after he got out of prison. But nothing's going to give him back those 27 years. Nothing's going to give him back every single day of his life that he worried about living. Just do I get to tomorrow? And I'm sitting here writing my autobiography on toilet paper, and I'm burying the toilet paper so nobody can find it. And when you read Long Walk to Freedom and you read some of his works, you ask yourself, what must the strength in this man's mind to be able to withstand that and still have love in his heart when he got there. Because he could have blown South Africa off the map if he wanted to. He could have said, everybody did this, we're going to start chopping off heads. We're going to start no, what was the first thing he did? We're going to have reconciliation. I'm studying this. It's reconciliation. And most black people are saying, why? Why should you have reconciliation for all the millions of black people that were killed? And I'm saying, well, think about this, which I spoke in front of an audience. I said, we could do the same thing in this country. If we want to have reconciliation tomorrow, we could have reconciliation. But what is going to change, as you mentioned, that until we can straighten out our schools, become economically viable within our communities, till we can end the violence in the black community, till we can do these things, I'm sorry, we're still going to be a society battling within itself. And like you said, we can't survive that way.
Well, because we don't look at root causes. We tend to not look at root causes. We look at something as if it's a stagnant bubble. Like, we don't want to look at root causes. Well, we look at, you look at the players, and people want to point to players. It's easy in the NFL to point to players and say, so we have 3 or 4 examples of recent where African American players have been involved in domestic violence. And so all of a sudden they're on a marquee about being, violent. So is there an undercurrent or a subset that says, they're trying to convey the point that African American males are being more violent, more specific violent than white males? I mean, if you look across a landscape, and again, we can look at that landscape of politics, of business, celebrity, sport, you're going to find it in every community. Get into your other point about this disenfranchisement, particularly economic disenfranchisement. I think the most poignant thing that ever happened to me around that was once driving a player of mine. I coached high school basketball, and a female player was driving to go, and we were driving through Wellesley. And this is around the time of 9/11.
Did you go a little faster to get through
2001. 2001. Okay.
She's looking around, and we were going to a game. She's looking around, and everybody has a flag out. And she says to me, I cry so much about my situation. I don't have any more eye water to cry with. And yet I drive out here, I see these flags everywhere, and I can see why everyone's so damn angry. These people got something to lose.
Wow.
And so that out of the mouth of a high school junior, on the way to a basketball game, said it all to me.
Now turn that to the desperation that so many young people of color across this nation are feeling right now. When you talk about Ferguson, when you talk about Fruitvale Station, when you talk about Trayvon Martin, you talk about all of these things, there is an anger that's building here that is ready to explode, and I don't want to be around here when it does. Because for one reason, it's going to be straight across the board where a lot of good people are going to get hurt. I'm more concerned about the good people. Bad people are always going to wind up doing some crazy stuff. But I'm more concerned about the good people that are going to get hurt.
Can we manage the anger and turn it into a positive? Can we somehow or other take that fervor, that feeling, and move it into a direction that can be positive? Because you guys all know, all this stuff is learned behavior. And you're trying to educate.
Well, when we talk about education, it's not just facilitated conversation. The center, what came out of the center really is the first application of what bystander empowerment or bystander intervention would look like. And so when you start looking at situations, or you look at, if you look at violence in the city, it's being promulgated by very few people on very few streets. And yet, you read about it's plastered on across the banner headline.
It leads, guys.
But if you start thinking about 99% of the youth, or maybe it's 98.5% that aren't involved in it, then how do you empower those bystanders to actually engage and create the skill set and toolkits that they need to intervene positively in their own communities? And so, and then how do you engage the rest of the people who are bystanders that to Jimmy's point, this is a whole societal issue. It's running through the whole social fabric of our society. And so how do you engage bystanders in the same thing, the toolkit and skill set, to intervene, to create a positive movement of social justice? So getting back to how we started the interview, I'm not, we are one small cog of a place that's really trying to put a sustainable social justice imprint in the social fabric of society, using the vehicle of sport, recognizing that so many people use it as a common ground to create conversation, and that maybe through that common ground they can build a tangential common ground and a third common ground, to the point where we get to the point of understanding that we are all humankind.